In a year of momentous happenings, 1995 saw the return of terrorism to the US and ethnic cleansing in the Balkans, while orbiting space station crews were setting records for endurance. In April, a huge car bomb tore apart a federal building in Oklahoma City, USA. The blast that had stunned the country brought mayhem and horror to an unlikely target in the heart of quiet Middle America. US President Bill Clinton, fighting to control his anger, condemned the perpetrators of the blast as evil cowards and vowed they would be brought to justice. The federal building housed several US agencies in the front line of the fight against crime and terrorism, including the FBI and the Secret Service. The blast blew away an entire wall of the building, gutting several floors and sending bullet-like glass shards flying through city streets. There were scenes of panic on the streets as bleeding people staggered, screaming and shouting from the gutted building. Firefighters said that they could still hear cries of help from people trapped under the rubble. A United States Army veteran, Timothy James McVeigh, was later convicted of the bombing and subsequently executed in 2001. His act, which had claimed 168 lives, was the deadliest event of domestic terrorism in the United States, and the deadliest act of terrorism within United States borders until the September 11, 2001 attacks. In space, 1995 was a momentous year for the crews of the Russian space station Mir and the US shuttle Atlantis. Russian cosmonaut Valery Polyakov returned to Earth, touching down on the snow-swept steppes of Kazakhstan after a record-breaking 438 days in space. Polyakov, a doctor, had broken the endurance record of 1 year in space in January and was one of only 5 people who had then spent more than 300 days in space. In his orbits in Mir, he travelled some 400 million kilometres, the equivalent of a return trip to the Sun, or 7 times the distance to Mars. Polyakov studied the effects of long-term weightlessness on the human body, using himself as a guinea pig. Later in the year, the US shuttle Atlantis docked with the Russian space station Mir, uniting the 2 former Cold War adversaries in a new era of cooperation. The Atlantis commander, Robert Hoot Gibson, glided the shuttle smoothly into a docking port on the station as the 2 craft, travelling at 28,000 kilometres an hour, passed high above Central Asia near Russia's border with Mongolia. But the Russian and US space crews on both vessels had to wait another 2 hours to greet each other and make history because the shuttle had to be firmly secured to Mir first. US Vice President Al Gore and Russia's Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin watched the docking at the Communications Center in Moscow's President Hotel. In the Middle East, a lone gunman assassinated Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin as he left a huge peace rally in Tel Aviv. Rabin, 73, a former general and Nobel Peace Prize winner, died in a Tel Aviv hospital just 90 minutes after addressing the rally. The alleged killer was 25-year-old law student Yigal Amir, a Jew who confessed at the scene, telling police, "I acted on God's orders, and I have no regrets." At a later trial, Amir was sentenced to life in prison. Not aware that nuclear testing had become a dirty word, French President Jacques Chirac rejected a plea from Japan and Australia to halt the planned nuclear tests in the Pacific. He said France would proceed with its plan to stage 8 more nuclear weapons tests on Mururoa Atoll before ending tests for good. As ethnic tensions were rising in the Balkans, the United Nations Tribunal on Human Rights charged 21 Bosnian Serb commanders with genocide and crimes against humanity. In a year of momentous happenings, 1995 was a year that also saw the Dalai Lama proclaim 6-year-old Gendi Techi Nima as the 11th reincarnation of the Panchen Lama. The 6-year-old was promptly arrested by the Chinese government and has not been seen in public since 1995. Truly a year of momentous happenings.